Today we're going to discuss knowing God, and which of course is impossible. If you've been in my previous classes, you would know that there's no possible way to know who God is actually. That would just not be within the realm of possibility, just because an infinite being is going to be infinitely beyond any concept we would have of him. Anyway, obviously knowing God is not a possibility in God's essence. So what I'd like to do first is just distinguish the difference between manifestation. Oops, let me try that again. You know what I'm going to do on this side? Essence, anyway. Essence. And on this side, manifestation. With all things, there's an essence and there's a manifestation. You yourself have an essence to you. You have like a soul, that's your real essence. And then you manifest with your hair color, your eye color, the clothes you choose to wear, the name you're using is the way you manifest. But there's an essence to you that's much deeper. I'm sure there's an essence to table. But this table is manifesting with wood top and a metal frame. And there's an essence to the wool I'm wearing in this vest, but it's manifesting in black dyed wool and in vest form, but it's made of wool, ultimately. Is that clear? So there's essence and there's manifestation. Okay, there's light. Light is always white. There's only white light, but it manifests in different colors. When it hits that particular shirt, it manifests in whatever color that is. I'm not even going to try. Peach, maybe. My wife would have a name for that shirt. She's great with these color names, you know. And yours, Jake, comes out as purple. Yeah, but there's only white light. It just manifests in different ways when it hits the fabric. Yeah, do you guys know that? Well, now you do. Okay. So God also has an essence, and God has how He has chosen to manifest. And even me saying He has chosen. Who says God's a guy? He's a he. God's also not masculine. That's another manifestation of how God shows up. God shows up, so to speak. He's chosen to relate to us in masculine form, which really means in assertion. He's asserting creation into being. That's the masculine. And we are in the feminine. All of us, even us men, are in the feminine. We receive. Feminine's the receiving. So we receive God in the feminine, and God blasts creation into existence at all times. That's a very masculine thing to do, is to assert creation into being. But that's a manifestation. God is not masculine. God is not a blaster. He's blasting this world, okay? But that's only because he's choosing to do that, not because it's his essence. You see, I can have an essence of being like late, yeah? It's a bit of a manifestation for my essence to come late to things. Now, if I just came perfectly on time to everything, I would be manifesting totally out of my essence because I choose to. So you can no longer trace me being on time to my essence, though, because it's totally out of the box for me. Totally out of the box. I choose it. And so too, all ways that God manifests, always, no matter how I'm going to explain God manifesting, in all those ways, they are chosen because God is beyond. Now, you would guess that most of us are manifesting more or less according to our essence. That more or less there's an overlap that's a proper overlap. With God, there is no overlap. Okay? With God, it is a total break between essence and manifestation. Because, I mean, we don't know this for a fact, but it could be in other galaxies. There's another Earth, not an Earth, but, its own Earth, with its own people, with totally different settings. And God's manifesting, it's possible for God to manifest any way or not. So therefore, any way you see manifesting is not it's not even hinting at who God is. It's only hinting at how God chose for you to relate to him. But it could be some other planet. God chose totally different circumstances and says, relate to me like this. Am I being clear here? Does this make any sense to you guys? Is there enough caffeine in the world for you to understand what I'm saying?
Can I ask a question?
Before you do, Shirat Rachel, I just want to ask Steve if he understands the zero correlation between manifestation and essence when it comes to an infinite being.
Yes.
Thank you. Shirat Rachel?
So you say that manifestation is a choice or?
For God.
Because you gave the example of being late, because you should.
I can choose it.
Yes, but what if, no matter how many efforts you put in, you're always late? Is that still a manifestation
Of choice?
Of choice?
That would be very much a manifestation of who I am, and very much not a manifestation of successful choosing. That would show that my choosing's failing badly. Yeah.
Does God have many essence, or he has no essence?
No essence. I mean, he has essence, but it's completely undescribable, undefinable, inconceivable. Inconceivable. Yeah, it's not conceivable. So whatever God's essence is, it's so beyond space and time and so beyond any possible understanding, not just for humans, but for any being.
Therefore, it's totally separate from manifestation.
Right. And therefore, any manifestation that God chose, he's only choosing that for us, not because it's some reflection of him.
Any manifestation that he chose.
For us to experience,
Meaning what? Like, for example?
we're going to be going through 3 categories of manifestations.
Why can't God be masculine and feminine, and the essence is, or he could have essence that we can understand?
Well, God does manifest also in the feminine a little bit in that he lets us give to him. We get to give offerings, we get to give thanks, we get to give, there's things we do give. And it is interesting that when we do give thanks to God, we call him in the feminine. We say, Modim anachnu lach. Modim anachnu lach. Suddenly we do switch God to the feminine and say, we're thankful to you. Lach is feminine. So we're saying, God, put on your woman hat, please, because we want to give now. We want to switch roles here. We're going to be the givers, i.e. giving thanks, and we like you to just receive it. And that would be obviously receiving the thanks as the feminine. So there is such a thing, but it's all in manifestation. His essence is unknowable.
So, I mean, an example of a human essence and manifestation is, let's say, human essence would be angry. Is that an essence?
Not at all, no.
What's an essence? What's an example?
For a human?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't know. But if you lined up my kids, let's say, next to me, and you knew them a bit, you'd say, okay, this one's very much like Yom Tov. This one's totally not like Yom Tov. Why? You don't know the kid. You just know his essence is totally a different essence than mine. And I actually have a kid who's got this totally out of the box essence. He fell off the moon.
And the manifestation.
Which is a really good thing, by the way, for Torah study, because he studies much more diligently than I do.
I'm trying to figure out what manifestation.
Of essence,
Yeah.
for me, it's going to manifest with music, it's going to manifest with sports, it's going to manifest with very loose concept of time.
Music is part of our essence, no? Isn't art part of who we are?
It could be, but one musician's going to be playing classical structure. Another musician's going to be playing improvisational jazz. That would be me.
That wouldn't be the essence.
It would be very much connected to his essence. Humans do manifest according to essence. You're saying right. So I would play an improvisational jazz bass, while that son of mine would play a very structured, classical piece. He plays clarinet, the one who's this very structured young man. But it's really great for drums, because he also plays drums, and he was raised on rock and roll. And so, oh my gosh, the guy's like a metronome. The song begins and ends at the exact same tempo. There's no shift in tempo ever. I've never met a drummer in my life where I didn't have to adjust his tempo at least once in a concert. Most drummers, several times, I'm making a little nod to them, saying slow it down, boy. Because they just start getting excited and they start moving faster and stuff. My son is there's no such thing. The beat is built into him. It's structure, and he's manifesting his essence. Okay, this is not our subject, though. Our subject is, usually we discuss how God's essence is unknowable. You notice most of my classes kind of tend around that. But what we're doing today is God's 3-pronged, chosen ways of manifesting to creation. One is through nature. One is through names. And one is through the 10 spheros. I'm going to spell that. 10 spheros, or sphirot if you're Sephardi, or in modern Hebrew they'd say sphirot. Okay? These are 3 prongs of how God has chosen to manifest in our world. And we'll start with nature. The natural world's created solely by God. So this pen, or this eraser, or my phone, or whatever, that we were involved in that in a major way. It's been manipulated by human beings. But when you look at the natural world, it is purely God sending out messages, saying, I'd like you to know me, Earth, this way. I want you on Earth, Earthlings, to know me this way. So I'm going to send you stars. You're going to have stars in your sky to gaze at and to wonder and to feel small in their presence, recognizing that each star is way bigger than, anything. And the amount of time it takes just to get here means time is way bigger than anything you could have ever imagined. I'm going to send you a sun so that you can have photosynthesis with your plants, and that it will keep you warm and it will make you happy. The sun delights human beings, as we see that there's depression in communities that are in the far north hemisphere and don't get to see a lot of sunlight around the winter. Yeah? And vitamin D is very good for us. I'm going to send you sunsets. It's not just going to disappear. It's going to be like an explosive, bouquet of colors that are going to shine through the sky and blow your mind. Yeah? I'm going to send you the Swiss Alps, where the air tastes different, where everything feels different in the Swiss Alps. And everywhere you look is just like, I'm going to send you Joshua Tree National Monument in the desert of California, where everywhere you go, it makes you marvel at the amazing creativity and imagination of the Creator. So you start thinking about, wow, like, how do you think of that? That's an amazing shape that mountain's made of. You guys have ever seen, anyone, raise your hand, you ever been at Joshua Tree National Monument? Oh, right? You ever seen anything like that on Earth?
Grand Canyon, maybe.
That's not like that.
Not the same structure.
Not at all the same.
Marveling.
Marvelous, but it's not a question of creativity. There's a question of awe-inspiring beauty and the raw power of water cutting through the earth. The Colorado River cutting through the earth and just showing you that and that thing is like, how many miles is it just to get to the bottom? Like, how long does that take?
That's the one.
1 mile, but how long does it take to get down there?
Like walk to hike it.
To hike it.
You're not supposed to hike it in a day, but could. It's like 18 miles, I think.
18 miles to go 1 mile.
Well, around
1 mile down. Oh, 18 miles down and back up?
Yeah.
But that's a lot of hours.
Yeah.
A lot of hours. So that's what God created those mountains for. And then you got the snow has its own experience. Snow is an amazing experience. All of these things are ways that God's trying to let us know how awesome He is, okay, and how amazing He is. Without them, you'd have no context whatsoever for the relationship with God. And it's not just that. God created scary dogs, okay, scary dogs. I'm not just talking about, regular dogs. I'm talking about scary dogs. Scary dogs are scary. And when you're feeling scared, well, now you have that emotion all ready for God. Because God's also a little scary, isn't He? What's going to be at the end of your life? You're going to be judged for every thought, speech, and action. Okay, I imagine I grew up worrying about being judged for actions, like speeding is an action. You get judged for that. You might cost you a lot of money. Okay, but being judged for speech, that's a little harsh. How about being judged for your thoughts? That's extra scary. Yeah, being judged for your thoughts. Can you imagine you had a megaphone on your brain? You just walked outside and all of a sudden there's like a megaphone on your head and it's just piping out everything you're thinking as you walk down the street. You'd run indoors as quickly as you could and hide. No one should know all these thoughts you have when you walk around. Yeah? But all those thoughts are being collected. Yeah, and then a little microchip. As we know, thoughts can be collected in great, vast amounts and take up very tiny space. Yeah, yeah, you hear it? It's freaky, right? Not to mention, we've all made mistakes, and how do we know? You know, even though we can erase our mistakes with the tshuva process, but how do we know we really dug out each? You know, we really scraped the barrel of what we did wrong, the real stain of the impact of what we impacted by the stupid moves we've made. And even if you did, most of those stupid moves affected others. And how do you know you really got their forgiveness? How do you know who they are to find them to ask forgiveness? And I'm going to be judged for that? Freak out. It's scary. But how would I know fear if not fear of the dog, a scary dog, or fear of death from having seen a photo or seen an accident or heard about some horrific situation? Not to mention natural disasters. Natural disasters, they're very humbling natural disasters. We realize how small we are when the earth suddenly lets loose and buries a town, you know? And you're just like, uh-oh, you know, we're very vulnerable here. We like to believe that the locks on our door and the reinforced steel has given us some level of security. Anyway, but natural disasters are freaky. And they send us freaking out. But they're nothing compared to Creator of the universe. Creator of the universe is super freaky. Right? He's super scary. Yeah? Anyway, but obviously it's supposed to be a little fear. You're not supposed to have a lot of fear, because a lot of fear is crippling for human beings. A lot of fear is crippling. And so it's important that you put your fear of God in context, because human beings don't do well with fear. It's also, especially in our generation, fear is a very negative reinforcer. It was good in the old days, but now you'll see that when people and teachers and rabbis and stuff put too much fear into kids, yeah, it backfires. They don't want to have anything to do with you or anything you're saying, and they just look for any alternative to what you're saying. Yeah, so we got to be clear. Fear is healthy. Keeps you you wear a seatbelt. If you're riding a motorcycle, you wear a helmet. It's from fear. You know, fear is healthy, but a lot of fear you'll never even get on a motorcycle.
That from fear is that from caution. Taking caution, you're not afraid of some.
Caution is what you do when you're afraid of consequences. You take caution. I definitely put on my seatbelt out of fear.
Afraid sounds more like unstable.
Well, you just don't like the word fear because you're from our generation. Caution's what you do when you're afraid. If you're feeling afraid, you take caution. Okay? If you're driving with someone who's like, you know, a driving instructor, he's a very good driver, and he's driving inside your Palm Springs resort to take you to your door, you don't need a seatbelt for that. There's no fear. There's no need for a seatbelt. He's driving 15 miles per hour. On the other hand, you're hitchhiking, a 16-year-old picks you up in a Mustang GT, convertible, and tops down. And he just goes, floors it. You're like, I'll get off here, please. You know, you don't want a seatbelt, you want a harness. So I race cars a lot. I use my brakes very carefully, very specifically. And normal drivers, the brakes only to stop. My brakes are part of the driving experience. So my wife always says, your seatbelt's not supposed to be part of your driving experience because it's harnessing us. I said, that is not a seatbelt, that is a harness, I tell her. And it's part of my driving experiences, being held in all the different G-forces that are hitting you. Okay? What's that?
Are we supposed to be very afraid of God?
So you are supposed to be very afraid of God. It just happens to be unhealthy for most human beings, especially in our OCD generation. So very afraid of God would be unhealthy, although it'd be accurate. Being very afraid of God is definitely the right way to go. It's just that we would all just crumple up and die, and maybe we'd just be too scared to be afraid. I'm too scared of fear. Yeah, and we have to. Yeah, I mean, putting a bumper sticker on your car that says "No fear" is stupid. No fear is bad. A lot of fear is dangerous for human beings to be healthy. So a little fear goes a long way. Okay, a little fear is good. Clear? Got to have a little fear of God. Yom Kippur is coming. Let's say you wake up Yom Kippur morning, you're like, I'm just not feeling it. I'm just not feeling it. I feel disconnected. I think I better go get a little breakfast. Okay? You need a little fear. A little fear to keep you from eating that breakfast. Right? You only do it when you feel it? No. I'm not feeling connected to God right now. I'm not feeling particularly close. I definitely don't want to spend the day in shul. And I'm hungry. I want to eat. So having a little fear of God keep you from eating. Yeah, so it's very important to have some fear. Yeah, and it's really tough in our generation. How many people I meet in our generation just, if they don't feel like doing something, they ain't going to do it. Yeah, they're not afraid of anything. The fear is not a part of it. Okay, so that's one of the ways God makes himself known, and that's through nature. I didn't mention the more beautiful stuff like love, but loving feelings you have for your parents, loving feelings you have for friends, loving feelings you have for a spouse. All those loving feelings that we have are all in order for us to have a loving feeling towards God. Especially our parents, because our parents are our benefactors. Our parents are giving to us all the time. They're in constant state of giving. Well, that sounds a lot like God, doesn't it? God's constantly giving you life at all times, just giving. You have a natural love for your parents, unless they've messed that up in some way. You have a natural love for your parents, and you should have a natural love for God, because we love our benefactors. You know, if Jake, if I started giving you $100 every time I saw you, yeah, you'd have quite a nice loving feeling for me. Yeah, you'd say, wow, I really love that, Rabbi Glaser. Yeah. So we love our benefactors. Now, there is something called the bread of shame. Bread of shame, you know the term bread of shame? Bread of shame is that you the people who give to you, you hate. But why? It's because there's a lack of independence, a lack of autonomy when you're always taking from someone. And that's why men between the ages of, usually around the ages of 17, 18 to about maybe forever, but they don't want to take that much from their parents anymore because they lack autonomy. And if their parents still keep giving them, they start to resent them. So there is such a thing as resenting your benefactor. God has to deal with this too. You could say Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve were overly given to. And so Adam just says, I'm going to eat from this fruit. I'm going to make God basically disappear. And then I can earn the relationship. I want to earn something on my own. I'm going to be on like full hard drive, you know, like, how do you say, hardwired, hotwired? I don't want to be hotwired with a direct link to God where I have no choice. And what happened, he went and ate from a fruit. He knew what that fruit was. That fruit puts the knowledge of good and evil. So now he can actually make bad choices so that he can now make good choices. And now he actually has some autonomy. There was no autonomy before he ate from that fruit.
There was a bad choice to eat from the fruit, so did it exist before he ate from the fruit or not?
Well, the question whether it was a bad choice or it was just, the whole discussion of free will around the eating of the fruit is difficult to discuss. It's funny, it's the first choice of man, so you'd think it's the best place to talk about choice, but it actually doesn't work at all. You can't even discuss it. It's like he had to eat from that fruit. There would have been no creation if he didn't eat from the fruit. We wouldn't be having this discussion if he didn't eat from the fruit. He had to eat from the fruit. None of this would have been known. None of creation would have happened. And that whole discussion, I'm only telling you this, it was all taking place in Yetzirah anyway. Asiya hadn't even been made. All of that was in Yetzirah. It was only after he ate from the fruit, got the knowledge of good and evil, that he got popped out of the Garden of Eden in Yetzirah, and he wound up in Asiya. So there wouldn't have even been Asiya. So you can't have an intellectual discussion about his choice to eat the fruit. Any other choice after that, Moses' choice to hit the rock, any other choices made after that, you can discuss with free will discussion. With this particular one of eating the fruit, it's a non-starter. You can't really discuss it intellectually because he had to eat from the fruit.
Why do you say he had to? If he wouldn't have, nothing would have happened.
Nothing would have ever happened, and the world would have ended.
Why did he have to? Why didn't he have to?
What?
He didn't have to. If he would have not eaten from it, then the world would have been perfect and everything would have been fine. I don't know, whatever happened.
Could have been. Could have been. Because I think God had something else in mind when God created the world than just hanging around with Adam. If you look in Derech Hashem, there's two stages. In the Way of God, the book of the Way of God, the Ramchal says there was first a stage where God tried to relate to man purely, and that didn't go at all, and then he tried to relate to man via our situation of knowledge of good and evil. So I guess, whatever it is, we're not going to get this class if we start discussing it. And I've had long discussions on it, and we never got anywhere. So I'm a very practical guy, and I don't like philosophy very much. I'm kind of anti-philosophy. You know what I believe in? Physiolosophy. You know what physiolosophy is? See, philosophy is just the study of thought. Thought, because it's, well, let's think about Adam eating from the fruit. Wouldn't that be interesting? Physiolosophy is discussions of thought that actually you can implement, you can integrate the discussion into your very life. You know, that today I can now put that in action. You'll notice that Hasidim are more into physiolosophy than Sephardi Kabbalists. The Hasidic Kabbalists are interested in physiolosophy, whereas the Sephardic Kabbalists, they love just like talking about numerical values and like, you know, like what this equaled and what that equaled, and hey, look at that, this, you know, this word equals that word, and well, I'm just saying Hasidim, they love esoteric thought, but only something that is now going to go directly into, you know, the way you'll say Shema from now on. We want to know that it's going to be applicable today, whereas the Sephardic Kabbalistic system, there's plenty they apply, but a lot of stuff is just mental acrobatics. It's a lot of mental acrobatics, which is still a mitzvah. I'm not saying it's not a mitzvah. They still have the mitzvah of learning Torah. They still have, and obviously if a chassid misses out on those parts and thinks he's going to get rewarded for learning all the Kabbalah, if he did not really learn those parts, he won't be rewarded for them. The Sephardim will be rewarded for him. But it is a known thing that the Hasidic Kabbalists are only interested in the Kabbalistic philosophies when they're applicable. And me being a Hasidic guy, I don't like having a lot of discussions that aren't applicable. It's just the way I am. So we're starting with nature, and we discussed various aspects of nature, all of which bring you to certain emotions and having a relationship with God, how God chose to manifest. The next is names. Okay, names of God are also manifestations. They're ways that God's trying to let us know not who he is, but how he wants us to know him. And here on the top of the line is the spiritual. And the bottom line is the physical world. And the names of God, you'll notice, for example, that one of those names is the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey. So a Yud looks like something like that. Yeah? It's a purely spiritual letter, the Yud. It doesn't touch physical at all. It's purely spiritual. So God's letting us know something about how he runs creation and wants us to know, like, this is how I run creation. Just like if you watched a musician play a solo that he chose the notes of, he's letting you know how he runs his guitar playing. So God has a way of showing us how he manifested the world. One of the ways he wants us to know him is via how he manifested the world. And the Yud is the first letter. And then there's another letter, I'm just putting these here so I can erase it afterwards, is the next letter is a Hey. Okay, which looks like that. Okay, that's the Hey. And the Hey of God's name represents dimension. Okay, so Yud is really like a point. You're supposed to look at a Yud as a point Kabbalistically. It's just a point. And then the Hey represents that point going into dimension. So God is saying that there is an aspect of him that is the Yud. It's called in Hebrew, it's called Chochmah. Chochmah. Okay, and that's not Chachma. It's Chochmah. And it has to do with it's a pure idea. Okay? And the Hey is the dimension of that idea, which has another term, which is called Bina, which is the analysis, or the analysis of that pure idea. So if I have a pure idea, what I mean by a pure idea is I just have an idea like I want to eat, I feel like dairy. Yeah, I feel like dairy. Haven't had meat, and I feel like dairy. So that's just a pure idea. I want dairy. Must be my body needs some calcium. So then it shoots over to the Hey, because that idea, dairy, I want dairy. Dairy is a point. But now when you expand that dairy into the dimension, into the Hey aspect, that's the Hey, letter Hey. When I expand the dairy into that Hey, so there's ice cream, there's yogurt, there's milk, there's cheese, there's sour cream, there's cream cheese, there's different types of cheeses, there's pizza. There's a lot of options. Grilled cheese sandwich, get a cheese omelet. Yeah, there's eat some chocolate, milk chocolate. A lot of options when it comes to, wanting a little calcium in my body. And that's all part of the Hey of God's name, which is the dimension of that thought. So too, God had a thought of creating the world. God, for whatever reason, said, I want to create a world. Boom. I want a world. Yeah, it's a thought. Now, that thought in all its dimension. So, what kind of world? What would be the ratio of me showing myself to the physicality of the world? Meaning, how much of me do they get to see? How much of me do they not get to see? So he started with Adam and Eve, where they get to see really everything. They could see right through everything. So God chose in the Hey to make a world that's translucent. They could see through it. After they ate from the fruit, so God decided to make it opaque. That's why you see things look opaque in this world. So there could be another planet somewhere that has way more vision of God than we have. Wouldn't be as much free will, but way more vision of God. There could be even less than we have, where there's a lot less clarity of God, and therefore, and maybe they never even got the Torah. They never got a revelation from God. So they're living in like darkness, so to speak. I mean, they may have a sun, but they're living in darkness regarding their understanding of God, and that would be different settings that God chose. Okay? But these are both intellectual. Okay? One is called the associative mind, where you just suddenly get ideas, like the brainstorm mind, where you just get an idea. And the other is called the analytical mind, where you analyze that particular idea. Okay? So God's letting us know that there's a Yud aspect of him and there's a Hey aspect of him. There is there's another letter that's just like the Yud. Yeah, it looks just like that Yud we drew, only it comes all the way down. Comes all the way down to the baseline. Yeah, which is just a Yud that's now been implemented in the physical world. So it basically gave birth. This is also the masculine. It's called the father. This is called mother, and it's just like when a man inseminates a woman, yeah. So now she now takes that seed and now creates life from that seed, okay. And that's why it's called the aim, okay, because an idea and then goes into analysis. That's of, father, aim, mother, and then that gives birth to physicality, which comes from the vav. The vav connects ideas to the physical world. And that connection would be perhaps seeing Yoni go get a scoop of ice cream in a store. Yeah? So there he goes, you know, he's walking. That's like the Vav, like, hey, it's happening. Everybody, it's happening. You know, he's going to get it. Okay, it's not just some idea he's having in the essentials class. It's now, there's implementation going on. In a proper business, you have to have all these. And once in a while you get a human being who has all four, but it's very rare. Then we have the final one again is going to be another hey. Oops. I blew that hey. Okay. And then the final hey is the dimension of it, and there's Yoni with his actual ice cream cone. So everything went well. He walked there, he paid for it, they scooped it, and now he's standing there with a three-dimensional cone. So there's full, now it's hit its dimensions. There's Yoni holding an ice cream cone and enjoying his ice cream. So it's hit dimension. Everything in everyone out who's listening to this right now, everything you've ever done followed this system. Everything that you've ever done in your life followed this system. Even that you're sitting in this class. Okay, you had a thought, I'd like to learn some Torah. Where do I want to learn Torah? How do I? You can learn it on computer, you can learn it on iPod, you can go to a class, you can open up a book yourself. You chose to come to the class. And the Vav is that you walked to the building, you came into the building, you sat down in the class, which is a three-dimensional class. Now that all is implemented in dimension, and now here you are in that class. Every single thing. The clothes you're wearing went through this exact process. The person who designed the clothes had a thought, I'd like to design clothes. Yeah. Or he had the thought, I'd like to design a t-shirt that's got colors that aren't the regular colors. You know, and that was what he analyzed. That was the hey. And then he sent it through the system. So he asked, you know, can we design that? Are we going to be able to sell enough pieces to afford that amount of piece goods? You know, or is it going to be cheaper for us to just? Well, they said we can charge another 2% for off colors. People will buy them. They'll pay the extra 2%. And they made all that analysis, and eventually the system was created. And then here you are wearing your T-shirts. Every single thing goes like this.
These letters, these alphabets are relatively new now.
I'm sorry?
These particular letters are relatively new. They were not what the letters written in.
These letters are new. They're not new letters. These are really, these are super old letters.
No, these are from Ezra. Before though, they had a different.
So there's a whole discussion about the letters that's not clear. You will never get clarity on the letters. There's apparently an ancient Hebrew text, and there's this text which looks more like more modern. But I've spoken to Kabbalists about it, and they say it was originally this text, then it went to other texts, and then it came back to this text, and which is like totally out of the box for the academic world. The academic world says that it was originally another text. Like you're quoting more the academic world. But I spoke to a big Kabbalist who says that this was the way it was. I mean, Moses' Torah looked like this. Later, in other periods, there was this more, it's different look. I don't know if you guys have ever seen what the ancient Hebrew looks like, but it's a different look to it. And then it came back to this look. Who am I supposed to believe? You know, how am I, but it's interesting that this one has all the amazing stuff in it. You know, I haven't heard any amazing stuff in the other one. But this one has, you know, all the cool stuff is here. You know, for example, an Aleph, which is very much according to God's, you know, what God's all about, the Aleph is one, and God is one, right? So you look at the Aleph, so it's shaped, it's got a Vav, like that, and it's got a Yud there, and a Yud there, right? Which is the same numerical value as 10 plus 10, Yud plus Yud is 10, right? And Vav is 6, right? Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled, Hey, Vav, 6, which equals what? 26. Well, look at God's name. 10 plus 5 plus 6 plus 5 equals 26. So you see, like the Aleph, which God is one, is perfectly equal to God's name. And then when people come and tell you that ancient Hebrew looked different, so we do have, archaeologically, we do have writing that was this ancient writing. But for some reason, all the magical stuff's in this writing and not in that writing. So It's hard to figure out, but if you just go off like academic websites or something like that, so you would believe this writing came later. But I did ask a very, very wise and modern Kabbalist. I mean, he's the son of a brain surgeon, and he's certainly not, he's no slouch when it comes to serious issues like this. He's not someone who doesn't understand these things. And he told me that this was the return of, that was the return of this. I don't know, I was also bothered. I was bothered by that. How can we learn so much in this if this isn't really the original? And so he said this was the original. Anyway, back to us. Okay, so these are names. Another name that's on every doorpost is, most doorposts, is Shin, Dalet, and Yud. Shin is a prefix, She, and Dalet and Yud is the word die. Dalet Yud spells She and die, and the word die means enough. Yeah, it means enough. And so what is that supposed to mean? The answer is that when God created the world and from his mind shot creation into being via this Vav, yeah, well that would completely knock creation out of existence. You get that? It would just blow creation out of existence. It would be like an unstoppable primordial nuclear blast that shoots into creation. Nothing could stop it, except that God has a whole other name that is a how do you say it? It squelches his energy. It limits. Shaddai. That it's enough. Stop. Slow down, light. Or otherwise you're just going to blow creation out of existence. I can't make a creation without the name Shin, Dalet, and Yud. Is that clear? There's no possibility of creation without the Shin, the Dalet, and the Yud name, which slows down the effect. Slows down the effect of light, which expands unlimited, in an unlimited fashion. Okay? You guys getting the picture more or less here? So these are all different names of God. Now, does God have a name? No. God doesn't have a name. God chose to share these names with us to let us know something about God. Another thing we see is that this name, Yud and He and Vav and He, is kind of makes up, and to put it here again, Yud and He and Vav and He, makes up other combinations, like, for example, Haya, Hoveh, and Yehiyeh. Haya, Hovah, Yehiyeh means was, is, and will be. Okay? Was, is, and will be. It's another thing God's trying to tell us. I'm completely outside of space and time. I show up outside. I'm outside space and time, and that's a very important aspect of me, is that I'm totally beyond space and time. God shows us another name, totally different name. Running out of room here. Elohim. Okay. I'm going to put this here. Okay. And that's a name that has plural. The Yud and the Mem at the end of a word is plural. So how can we, monotheists, I thought God's one. We have a plural name of God? That's peculiar. It should really raise an eyebrow. God has a plural name? And the answer is the name Elohim is how God shows up in physicality. Meaning literally manifest, but not literally God's manifest, but in the end, all there is God. So all this stuff is really made of God, right? If all there is God, so then there's nothing but God. And then everything in here is part of God. But God doesn't have parts. So what's going on? The answer is that God chose to, with the name Shin, Dalet, Yud, to limit God's essence from, or light, it's not essence, limit God's light that he manifested into the world for there to be a creation. God limited it until finally there was so much limitation of light that you actually have seemingly physical objects. But these are also God, because God's everywhere and God's all there is. There is nothing but God. Einod milvado. There's nothing but God. So how God shows up in the physical world is via the name Elohim. Elohim, meaning we might call it Elokus, Elokut, is inside of all of this stuff. Everything is filled with Elokus, with Elohim. Godliness, you could call it. Elohim could be called godliness. That godliness is in all things. So that now you got Hashem, surrounding space and time. Elohim, filling space and time. So God's like a burrito. Yeah, he's surrounding, he's like the tortilla, and infinitely beyond. And he's also the rice and beans, and the salsa. You guys like meat or cheese? You got to choose. This is a Jewish burrito. You like a cheese burrito? Yeah. Okay. I like a meat burrito. It's the only reason to go to LA, by the way. If you ever wind up in LA, I mean, I have more than a reason because I have family there, but if you wound up in LA, there's an authentic Mexican food place, the only authentic kosher Mexican food probably on earth. And you can just have like the real deal, and once you taste that, you can really never eat Mexican food again after that. So maybe you shouldn't do it. But my wife makes Mexican food every couple weeks because I'm from California, and she always, very nicely prepares burritos and ice cold Coronas with little limes in the bottles. And you're all welcome to my sukkah party on the Mexican night. We have the famous Mexican night. Every night's a different party in our house, in our sukkah, but Mexican night's probably the favorite of everyone. And the ticket to get into a Mexican night is you either have to bring a 6-pack of Corona or a bottle of tequila. Yeah, those are your choices.
You get Corona in this one?
Yes. Okay. So anyway, these are the names. And then to end, I'm not going to go into the spheros in any detail, but perhaps we'll do the 10 spheros tomorrow and go into, is tomorrow Wednesday? I think I'm not on tomorrow. Thursday we could do it. I'm on Thursday. Anyway, but the 10 spheros are the 10 ways that the whole creation runs. God runs the creation on these 10 spheros. And perhaps we'll do them on Thursday. This is not the time or the place to go into them at this point in the class, to go into the 10 spheros. But the 10 spheros is an amazing, amazing study. And it really gives you an understanding of how God actually runs the entire creation. And it's really the ultimate way that God's saying to know him. God's saying to know him via those 10 ways called the 10 spheros. Is that clear? So in review, God's essence we could never know. Okay? You might get to know it better after you pass away, but even then you're only going to get what God shows you. Okay? It's probably still manifestation. It's really unknowable, God's essence. The ways God chose to manifest to us, though, where he said, hey, earthlings, the way I want you to know me is via nature, via these names, and via the 10 spheros. We spoke a bit about nature. We spoke a bit about the names. And there's more names than this, but we spoke about these names in the meantime. And the 10 spheros are these 10 amazing beams that if you get to know them well, you get a whole other understanding and grasp of the wonders of God. Okay, which perhaps we'll do on the next session. Okay, questions? Go ahead, you can start. You can start.
So, at the beginning, you were talking about the balance of healthy fear versus unhealthy fear, and because I see there's like totally different types of people in the class, I know that I feel more comfortable asking this because people who have grown up with less real exposure might err on
Exposure to what?
To
Torah?
Judaism and
Yeah.
and like the high holidays and stuff like that. So they might err on the side of too little fear, but people who have grown up on the observant side can get, like I heard actually Rabbi Moshe Weinberger speak a couple of years ago, and he was like exactly what you said. Fear is not, it's too much for our generation. Like it's for earlier generations. But my question is, if you've been you've gotten such a heavy dose of that it actually, like I remember sometimes being terrified on Rosh Hashanah, like that scared. And like, it's not like, it could go away a little bit, but you know.
Oh, how do you deal with it if you were raised with over amounts of fear?
Yeah.
With love, I think. Just really doing a more intense focus and understanding of God's love. And just, so then when you get in there on Rosh Hashanah, you realize, like, God's so happy I'm here. God, every little word I say is loving. Every time I call him Avinu, I'm going to focus more on the Avinu than the Malkenos. You know, I'm going to say, Avinu, Malkenu. Yeah, Avinu's my father, Malkenu's my king. Yeah, kings we're afraid of, fathers we're not afraid of. Yeah, so, you know, I'm going to focus more on Avinu than Malkenu. I'm going to remember all day long that he loves me. I'll put a little note, my bookmark in my sitter is that he loves me. You know, in my machzor for that. Just focus more on the love aspect. And where you can only think one thought at a time. So as long as you keep overly thinking the love side, it'll temper the fear side.
But where does the love side come into all of the judgment, especially in the high holidays? Like, where does it just seems like you're still going to get nailed for like everything, every little detail. God has a memory bank that's like beyond. So how do you? Where does the love part come into that? It's still terrifying.
Well, you made it through last year. You'll probably make it through this year. You know, I mean, so far you just keep living year after year. And there's a certain celebration on Rosh Hashanah. You know what Rosh Hashanah means? Yoni, you're going to be praying Rosh Hashanah this year. You know what? Can I tell you one of the things it means? That your prayers were answered last year. That however a lame job you did last year, do you think you did an amazing job last Rosh Hashanah or fairly lame? I mean, we still got a few days left. I'm not saying right now you're sliding into home plate. Let's call it like that. You're already in like full slide. Like, you know, you're sliding into home plate. And I bless you to make it. But you can know that even with your fairly lame davening last year, God said, okay, you're in. You're in. You get another year. Henry, I don't know how yours was last year, but seems, you know, all goes well for another, I don't know how many days left we have, 8, 9 days. I
don't believe it has anything to do with my prayer.
Why, you didn't pray much last year?
It's kind of just, you know, forgiving or whatever.
That's right. That's true. Even if you had terrible, let's say you got God forbid, you caught a cold. You spent your whole day in bed. You had to have some guy come and blow shofar on the side of your bed just so you could at least hear the shofar blast. Not all 100. You heard 30, the requisite 30, and not the rest, not the other 70. You blew them on the side of your bed, and you were just like, oh, who's making all that noise? You know, and your head's pounding. And that was your whole Rosh Hashanah? You think God would have pity on you? He knows you were sick. Of course he's going to have pity on you. Of course he's going to have pity on you. He's going to have pity on you because, I mean, who are you in 2014? You're going to have such perfect prayers that somehow you're going to, because of your prayers, chances are there's no one even in this room that because of their prayers is how they're going to make it through the year. He's going to have pity on us. Like, thank you, Henry. You saved the day. There's no one in our generation, one of us is going to have such intense concentration and such proper fear and trepidation of the king that we were granted a year. No, God's going to say, that's Ben. What do you want from him? Yeah, let him through. Let him through. Give him another year. Yeah. And we all aim for that. We all want to get there, but it's not exactly on our prayers that gets us through. Anyway, God wants us here for some reason. Not sure why. But God wants us here, even though we act like fools most of our, if you actually count the hours of your day, you know, it'd be scary to think about how many of those hours broken into its minutes were even spent thinking about God. How much we ignored God versus thought about God it would be ridiculous. Even me, I'm the rabbi, you know. What if I actually did the math of like, seriously, 24 hours a day, each hour is 60 minutes. 60 times 24 is, I don't know how many minutes. You break it into the seconds. How many of those seconds were actually thinking about God? And I'm going to ask for another year? God's like, why should I? Why should I? And the answer is, like Henry said, because no one anyways. I've got a whole other plan for creation. and you're going to see it because you're the generation that's going to see it. No one's getting by on their own merit now. It's all mercy. Everyone's getting by on God's compassion, that he's having mercy on us, and he, for some reason, wants you and I around at this point in history. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here right now.
My father's marriage could like take 30, 40 people through the year.
What's that?
My father's marriage could take like 30, 40 people through the year easily.
His marriage?
His marriage.
Oh, his marriage. Your father's.
Yeah, he like probably had these rooms covered. People.
Oh, very nice. So that's the other thing, another answer. There are holy people out there who, when they wear tallis, over them, we see it, the tallis ends here as it drapes down behind them. They don't see it that way. They see it as it's long. It's like a long train, like a wedding dress goes long. Their tallis goes long, and there's busloads of people inside there. When he's praying, he's having in mind everybody. Think about it, all the prayers are in the plural. There's no singular, there's no first person prayers, Rosh Hashanah. It's not Avi Malki. It's Avinu Malkeinu. It's our God. It's our Father, our King. And there are people out there, and there will be this year too, who are super holy rollers like his father apparently. And they're wearing their tallis, and their tallis just keeps going. And everyone's underneath it with him. I know my wife and my kids certainly count on being under my tallis. I have in mind all my students, whenever I make those prayers, even the silent prayer of after the 13 attributes of mercy, where we make that silent prayer that God should protect us. Yeah, it says me and my wife and my kids. And I always add, V'chol nilvi malai, all people relying on me in some way spiritually for all my students, because they're all under there. I got everyone with me. Another reason is you're covered anyway by people who are super holy, not to mention generations past that prayed for future generations. You have every lady, every Fridays, and your grandmother and your great-grandmother, and all the way down the line, poured rivers of tears in front of her candles for the generations to come. How do we know we're not all just sliding by on those tears? How do you know you're not in this room because of those tears? Those tears are probably what you're doing here in the first place. Where's everybody else? Where are your siblings? Where are your buddies you grew up with? Where are all those guys? Somehow one of those tears had your name on it. And God put that tear right in some flask and said, here comes Henry. Yeah. And Henry one day wakes up and says, I'm going to yeshiva. Yeah. So you never know. You never know. We don't know what's making us slide by, but we're sliding by. We're all sliding by, and we're all going to make it right to Yemos HaMashiach. Sas Hashem. Okay, you had a question?
The manifestation of God is just for us to relate to him and whatever. So what about the things that we don't understand? Why do things that we can't apply
To understanding?
God?
Meaning we'd never understand God by that stuff?
No.
That's this week's Parsha. Hanistras, right? Niglas lanu lunenu, nistras lashem elokeinu. The hidden things are for God. We don't have to. You have to understand everything. Earlier I was talking about white light. Any of you seen white light? Never seen that. And you understand white light? No. Unless you're a physicist. There's all kinds of things we don't understand that we live with. So there's all kinds of aspects of God that we just don't understand. But they're obviously necessary. Even eating kosher, we don't understand that. Well, we understand. What's the difference? What, I can eat this burger. Sorry, I can eat my cheese sandwich, or I can eat a piece of cheese and go brush my teeth and eat a burger. Yeah? All within 1 minute. Oh, but to eat a burger, I can brush my teeth, I can go to the dentist for a full teeth cleaning, whatever. I can't touch meat for all these hours. Why not? What's the difference? And what's the big difference between pig and meat anyway? What is the big difference? Does it really make a difference? Although I heard recently that pig doesn't assimilate into the human body, which is amazing. Pig shows up. Pig shows up. I mean, if you eat meat, and it goes in your stomach, gets broken down in the stomach, goes in your bloodstream, and then basically becomes you. Because it feeds the organs and replenishes your body until that meets you, and whatever doesn't become you goes out. So they can't find the cow in you. If you ate a cow 2 days ago, and they can't find it and then the guy dies and they try to find the cow in his system, you can't find it. It assimilates fully into the person. Pig does not assimilate at all into a person. This is a recent scientific discovery that you can actually find the pig all over the guy. As long as his cells are still utilizing the pig nutrients, you can find where the pig is in the guy. It's interesting. It's just a new scientific finding they found out about pig. That the body just will not, it can't become the human. It can give him energy, it can give him protein, it can give all kinds of stuff, but you can still find the pig in that protein.
Genes, amino acids.
I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but apparently pig never quite assimilates into the human being. Last question, Moshe.
Yeah, the essence and manifestation, does that apply to people as well? Do you ever really know the essence of a person or anybody is manifesting? Or
Yeah, you can. You can know you can know the essence of a person. I mean, most people wouldn't be able to truly figure out the essence, but you could know. Whereas God, you can't. Okay, Shalom. Shalom, everyone.